Brand owners and manufacturers for years have taken a passive approach to Amazon, allowing resellers to sell their products on the platform, provided that they abide by MAP. Good luck controlling that. But there's a reality that most businesses aren't aware of. Amazon is unlike any other sales channel, and failing to control and defend your brand can have devastating consequences well beyond the Amazon platform. Today, we're going to discuss the number one obstacle most well-known brands face and how you can do the impossible. Protect and defend your brand on Amazon. I'm Jason Boyce, founder and CEO of Avenue 7 Media and host of the Day 2 podcast. With me today is my good friend Shannon Roddy. Shannon, how's life?
Life is good. You know, Georgia Bulldogs won state championship.
Oh, here we go again with your Georgia
undefeated
Bulldogs.
To state.
Folks, I'm so
blowout.
tired of hearing Shannon brag about his Bulldogs, but I guess it's worthy.
Yeah, Jason, I'm doing great. And you know, I have to do a quick pitch for Prosper Show coming up in March that our team will be at. I know you'll be hosting a panel or two, and I'll be speaking on advanced SEO strategies. If you're subscribed to our email list, we've got a discount code we can share with you. So we'll include a link to sign up for that in our show notes. So Jason, holidays are over. We both have a lot going on. How are you doing?
You know, I'm doing great. Really happy to be back in the Northwest. And, you know, as you can see from my background, I'm not in my office anymore. We're Airbnb-ing while we look for a home up here in beautiful Portland, Oregon. I've grown my Oregon beard out longer just to stay warm compared to the LA weather that I'm used to, but the family's here and we're loving it. And Shannon, I'm really looking forward to catching your presentation at Prosper Show. I never miss a Prosper Show. Love the show, and I don't plan to miss any in the future. I am looking forward to doing a trends and predictions panel, and I'm trying to squeeze in another one or two. And there's new leadership at Prosper. Christine Corcoran has done an amazing job putting together a very valuable agenda for Amazon sellers. They've even changed their pricing structure so that it's more seller-centric. They don't allow folks like us to go in there and turn our presentation into a commercial. It's about adding value for third-party sellers, for brands, for folks who are trying to get a handle on selling on Amazon. So highly recommend you do it. Sign up for our newsletter so you can get that discount code. And if you're there and you listen to the podcast and you see Shannon or I walking around, please come up and say hi. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to hear a little bit about your story. And, thanks as always for being here today. A couple of things that are different about Prosper Show than some of the others. They don't allow speakers to get up there and do a TV commercial for their agency or their brand. It really is meant to help sellers. And in fact, you know, if you are a seller, you'll pay a lot less than if you're an agency like us to go and sit in on the sessions. And they do that on purpose. They want this to be a seller-centric show without tons of advertising, and they want to provide value. So I'm with you, Shannon. Looking forward to it.
Agreed. One of the things that prompted this is we've had several conversations in biz dev with prospective clients, and it's literally the same conversation over and over again, which is why I wanted to do this podcast. So for future brands and distributors or for future brands and manufacturers, we can just send them this episode. But it's so critical, it's so key, and yet I view it as the number one obstacle. So what I see and what I was thinking about last night is the number one obstacle facing most brands and manufacturers is not the inability, but the unwillingness to prevent resellers and distributors from selling their products on Amazon. Why is that so hard to do, Jason?
Well, it is hard to do. And, you know, at Av7, we've helped a lot of brands transition from the old B2B model where they were either selling directly to retailers. The more problematic is when they sell to distributors who then distribute that product out. You know, all that product gets scattered to the winds. And I have to tell you, I mean, we just had a live in-person meeting with one of our big automotive clients, and the CEO admitted freely after we've been working with them for several years that, hey, this is a really hard transition. It is a mindset change that is required throughout the entire organization. And sometimes the reason why they're unwilling to do it is because they just don't have the knowledge. And hopefully on this episode, we can help them understand why it's important. And so from our perspective, Shannon, we've been through this so many times, it's not that hard. But imagine a business that has been doing business the same way for 30 years. It's a really hard culture shift to get them to think direct to consumer, to get them to think no middleman. I want to have a direct relationship with the end user who's used their credit card to buy the product, added to cart, and received it. And it's always interesting. It's always interesting to see some of the feedback from the B2B brands. Many times, here's one of my favorites, Shannon, is brands who are used to selling to a buyer who then sells on a retail channel often don't get that real world feedback from the end user. And when they first start to get that real world feedback in the form of, say, an Amazon review, they get pissed. They're like, what? This is outrageous. I've never heard this complaint. In 30 years of business, this platform stinks. And, we have to spend a lot of our time saying, hey, it's okay to be pissed. I know this is your baby, but you should thank that Amazon shopper for leaving an honest review about your product. It's giving you really good intel to take back to your product managers to have them incorporate in the next iteration of your product. So get from, the 3.5 star to 4 star to 5 stars.
What are some of the other reasons why it's so hard for brands and manufacturers to make that shift, right? They've been thinking a certain way and they're telling themselves these stories. What are the stories that they're telling themselves that are preventing them from making that shift?
Oh, yeah. Great question. So one of the stories is I have a MAP pricing policy, so everything's fine. If I find somebody who's selling below MAP, I just stop selling to them. But then they're like, well, we show them the listing and there's 25 other sellers selling their brand on Amazon. And I'm like, do you know xyzseller.com? Do you know who that is? Do you know how to shut those guys off? They're like, I don't know who that is. I don't know how to find them. So one is they think that a MAP policy is a good channel control strategy. Certainly they think a MAP is okay. Go back and listen to the Whitney Gibson episode, the partner at Voorhees, which is a great legal law firm that has, not only built the case law, but also figured out how to enforce this. So, Whitney, if he was on the call right now, Shannon, he'd say a MAP policy, it ain't shit, right? You need to have a reseller policy that creates a material difference among many other things. So that's a good episode to listen to. But it's also it's just easier, Shannon. It's easier to let somebody else deal with that beast called Amazon. So, hey, they'll say to us, hey, Shannon or Jason, all of that you're saying makes a lot of sense to me, but I don't want to have to learn Amazon. I don't want to have to deal with that. I know what my profit margin is every time. If they want to undercut on Amazon, it's on them. So I think what they miss when they make that decision is the loss in brand trust. If you lose pricing integrity, if you lose brand integrity and your product, which you've spent maybe your whole professional life perfecting, is not being put in the best possible light on Amazon, it degrades your brand. And so, those are a few. What are some of the ones that you see as sort of obstacles, and what are you hearing from brands when you say, hey, this is our motto, you should be the only seller on Amazon? And they're like, whoa, wait, I don't want to do that because. What are some of the things you hear, Shannon?
I think one of the biggest ones that I get consistently is they're afraid. They're afraid of upsetting their big distributors and their big brick and mortar. Oftentimes they're selling into brick and mortar and it's almost like a freebie. Hey, we're going to sell to you. And as a result, we're also going to let you sell on Amazon, right? And so they sort of look at it as this courtesy, but really it's free money. And we're going to talk about that in a little more depth. But they're afraid that if they cut them off on Amazon, that reseller or retailer is going to cut them off and stop carrying their product. And there's only two sides to that story. Number one is they're doing tons of great revenue, and there's no way in the world they would cut you off from their brick and mortar sales, because why would they leave all that money on the table? Or two, they are only selling your product on Amazon. And if you cut them off of Amazon, they will have zero sales, in which case they're also offering you zero value. And so that's really the two sides of the coin that I see most. But I think there's some other things. In some cases, they're contractually obligated. So it's like, hey, look, we've agreed to allow some companies, but hey, once that contract expires, it's time to revisit it. Talk a little bit about profitability and how manufacturers look at profitability on Amazon versus other channels.
Yeah, and just going back to your previous comment about contractually obligated, that just makes sense, right? Hey, Jason, we can't go direct on Amazon and kick off these guys because we have a contract that doesn't expire for 9 months. And in fact, we've got a handful of clients right now that we are helping with that transition. Jen, we talked to one today, and they made they made the right decision. They cut off their distributor. They're going to be the only seller, and they're going to be very happy. But this profitability question is another one that comes up. And, we talk to brands all the time and they say, hey, I'm more profitable if I just sell to a distributor, right? And so I can't make as much money if I'm selling direct, if I'm doing the wholesale model. Well, that's sometimes the case, but I also hear that from direct to consumer folks, and it's just not the case. It's just not true. I learned this from our good friend Tyler Jeffcoat over at Sellers Accountant. He's got a ton of benchmark data that he references all the time. And here's the misnomer. When you look at gross margins on Amazon versus gross margins on your DTC website, let's say you're a big Facebook seller, the gross margins look smaller, right? You got that seller fee in there, you got you got advertising costs and everything. But then if you look below the gross margin line and you look at all of the additional stuff that goes into selling direct to consumer, and you look at that net profitability is still, in spite of Amazon fleecing sellers, is still better than the DTC net profit. So I think it's a win-win. I also think that there is a cost to controlling your brand and pricing integrity. And sure, you may be able to make more profit today by selling to a distributor, but the distributor model, with very few exceptions, is dying. And if you're not willing to have that direct relationship with the consumer, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have your lunch eaten by a smart, upstart Amazon seller brand who gets it and is selling direct and is going to eat your market share. Most folks who have that wholesale relationship and are relying on a distributor to sell their products on Amazon, most that I see week in and week out, Shannon, are seeing a decline in market share. Regaining that market share starts with being the only seller on Amazon, defending your brand, and getting with great legal partners and agency partners, if that's the case, or internal departments to clean that up and be the only seller on Amazon.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Your net profits may be better, but if you are dying instead of growing, it's not going to last long.
Well, I would say your gross profit, I would say, just a clarifying point, I would say your gross profit may look better, but if you look at the full list of expenses required to run a DTC business, your net profits on Amazon are always better. In almost every case. And you don't have to take my word for it. Our friend Tyler Jeffcoat at Seller Accountant reminds me of this every time we talk.
We'll have him on soon.
We need to. He's great. He can really break this down for us even more, and we should do that. So Shannon, what are some of the challenges and issues that arise out of allowing or not controlling the Amazon channel, but allowing multiple resellers to sell your product on Amazon?
Yeah, a lot of them come down to the catalog, the way the catalog is impacted, right? So you have a couple issues. Number one, you get poorly optimized listings, but you also have duplicate listings. And part of that comes out is you have all of these sellers competing. They want to get the sale because basically they're looking for free money, right? They are looking to just capitalize on your brand awareness, the quality of the product, and just reap the traffic of 65, 75, 85% of product searches that start on Amazon and just reap the rewards. And so what you'll see people do is you'll see resellers creating new listings or duplicate listings using their own UPC codes or UPC exemption, using their own brand names or the wrong brand name so that they can be the sole seller of your product on their own listing. And it just creates a nightmare, chaos and confusion for customers, right? It does not benefit the customer experience. And they're always fighting to win the buy box if they stay on the same listing. So, if you're not monitoring MAP 24/7, they just wait till 5 p.m. when everybody goes home, everybody drops their price and, they do it over the weekend. They drop their prices over the weekend and your brand equity is just being demoralized, on the Amazon platform. So from a catalog standpoint, I think that, parentages, variations, we've just seen, in fact, I had a conversation with a potential client over the last couple months, two actually. They said, we need help doing catalog cleanup because we've got all these resellers. We're allowing the resellers, it's okay. And I said, that's fine. But just know you will have to put us on retainer until the day you close your doors because that catalog stuff is never going to stop. We are going to have to fight with the contributions from resellers and recreating and fixing parentages basically till the end. Any issues that you see out of, brands who say, it's okay, I'm allowing these 17 resellers to sell on Amazon, no problem. What else are they missing out on?
Well, the thing that sticks in my mind the most is advertising has become a must-have in order to drive revenue growth on Amazon. That's Amazon sponsored ads or DSP. By the way, we have our own DSP seat now, Shannon. And so, if any of our listeners are interested in utilizing that tremendous program, please reach out to us and we're happy to help you grow that side of your business. But when you allow other sellers to attach to your listings, let's assume that you have brand registry and you have rights of your listings, which often doesn't happen. But let's assume that you do. If you allow others to come in there and undercut your retail price, you lose attribution data. And so if your ad manager or your agency is trying to win for you on Amazon and you get that first click, but the sale goes to one of the resellers because they've come in, like you said, at midnight and lowered the price $20, you don't know that that ad actually worked. And so you may make a bad decision, pausing a campaign, debidding a campaign, and then you're losing out on overall growth. So, I mean, I think that to me is one of the biggest. And, just doubling down on what you said, that the catalog cleanup messes that we see on a regular, that Malia and James's team spend a lot of their time cleaning up, are very hard for the average bear to accomplish. You need professionals to do it. And it's better to not have that problem out of the start than to have to go back later and clean it up, because the Amazon algorithm likes a concentration for your brand on good listings that get a lot of clicks and a lot of conversions. And if all of that traffic is spread out amongst a mess of other resellers or listings, you're not getting the maximum benefit and you're not getting the algorithm to help your sales flywheel spin faster. That's another piece I think that really sticks out in my mind, Shannon.
Yeah, I've had a conversation, and this was back when I was doing coaching, and I basically had to fire him. I said, "Look, guys, you're calling me every 2 months for the same stuff. I'm sick of it." Right? They had a brand, right? A consumable product, and they had 7 authorized resellers. And I'm like, guys, that is literally the worst idea. It's like having 7 authorized drivers for a semi truck. Like, everybody's fighting for the wheel. But what would happen is people, all their sellers would send in FBA inventory, but none of them could predict how much of the buy box they were getting. So none of them could accurately forecast. Nobody wanted to drive ad sales. And so what you wound up having happen is one person would run out of FBA inventory early. The other person would have to recall inventory at a massive expense. Amazon just increased their fees for liquidation and, removal. So it's like, it just creates this nightmare of chaos and contention. And basically these sellers are fighting. And at the end of the day, they are not adding any value to your brand or your bottom line.
One more defensive element for the FBA folks that are sending their product into the Fulfillment by Amazon network is that if they haven't created their own and managed their own listings by themselves and created FN SKUs using Amazon labeling, that inventory can get commingled too. And, that reseller who attached to your listing, they may have, got that through, a parking lot sale, and the box is all beat to hell and the packaging is messed up. And your whole brand can suffer on the performance side if these resellers are coming in there commingling your inventory with theirs. It just creates a lot of headaches. There's just no good reason to allow resellers. And Shannon, I have to say this for our listeners and viewers who are resellers and maybe who are retail arbitrageurs, folks, there's still a place for you. We're not saying don't do reseller business. We just think if you're going to build a brand, you have to defend it. And, I know of some very big, even billion-dollar resale brands who have the ability to get product or have exclusives with brands where they're the only ones reselling. So it's not completely binary. It's not a 1 or a 0 here. There is a home for resellers on Amazon, so long as those companies act responsibly and respectfully with the brands that they're selling. And even retail arbitrageurs, if you're out there doing a side hustle on Amazon, I don't have any problem with that. But the best way to build a long-term sustainable business that has market value that you can someday sell to create family generational wealth, it's doing this, Shannon, controlling your own brand.
So you mentioned this a little bit with attribution data, right? That brands are missing the attribution data for advertising. What are some of the other things that brand owners are missing when they fail to control the platform and just allow resellers to go willy-nilly and sell even with permission?
Yeah, look, I think that the future of product sales starts with a direct relationship with the consumer. And B2B sellers, folks that are only B2B, they're missing out on all of that intel that their competitors have. So the direct relationship with Amazon shoppers and those 300 million Prime subscribers is something that is incredibly valuable if they can set ego aside, listen to what the shoppers are saying, and take action based on themes that are developing in the reviews and the Q&A sections, and with the return reasons. And so you miss on that. And I think it's one of the main reasons why, Shannon, big brands call me all the time and say, Jason, who the hell is this brand that I have never heard of that is kicking my ass all over the Amazon sales channel? And I'm like, well, you don't have a direct relationship with that shopper. You're missing out. So you should be the only seller of your product, and you should be having that relationship, because these smart Amazon sellers who've developed their brand Amazon first, they get it. You don't. Let us help you get there. We've got several brands who really just cut those relationships off. They cut those distributors off, and sometimes they've given up millions in revenue, but now they're capturing it back on Amazon through a direct relationship, and it's clean and tight. And I got to tell you, there was some serious pucker factor from them when they made that decision, and rightfully so. It's hard to cut off a long-standing relationship. It's hard to erase a line item on your profit and loss statement. But we just kept telling them, trust in the process, trust that you're going to pick this revenue up. And I think they're much happier now after making those difficult decisions.
That's true. I mean, we talked about catalog already. The ability to control the catalog is increased 1,000%. In fact, I had a brand say, we don't want to sell, we just want to control the catalog. And I said, Amazon won't even allow you to update a listing if you don't have inventory. If you don't have that, ASIN in your catalog, Amazon's not even going to make an update. You're not even able to sort of, put that ASIN under your brand registry without, active inventory. So, that's one of the other, pieces that I think, again, plays into that catalog piece. But what are some of the other things that brands are missing out on by not capitalizing on that direct to consumer relationship?
If you're not on Amazon, sticking your stake in the ground and defending yourself on that platform, you're totally susceptible to counterfeiters also. If you got a well-known brand and you're not only controlling resellers who are selling your own product, it makes it harder for you to do anything and take any IP action. You really should be there in order to defend yourself. So you lose out on that as well if you just make it a free-for-all with resellers. And, I think in this day and age, in the 1980s, 1990s, it's a different story. But in this day and age, if you don't control every customer experience, or don't work with reputable retailers who do a great job protecting and defending your brand, you're just going to get beat. You're going to get beat by the competition. You've got to control your pricing integrity across channels. You've got to control your messaging platform and your visuals so that it's so there's brand continuity. You need to control packaging, that end-to-end consumer. You need to listen to what those shoppers are saying, and you just lose out on all of that. And then, of course, lastly, there's so much data and intel. I hate to beat a dead horse on this one, that you can get with that direct relationship. So, and then, I would say the most important one is you're missing out on revenue. You're missing out on top line revenue that you could be gaining with a very high net profit on Amazon if you're sticking your head in the sand like an ostrich.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. Brands who are allowing multiple resellers are not growing aggressively on Amazon. They're basically, like I said, getting passive income. And, I know I reference Apple a lot because they do so many things right. But when Steve Jobs and the team were talking about this idea of Apple stores and creating a Genius Bar, it was for one reason. We don't trust anybody else to sell our products the way we believe they should be sold. They wanted that direct business to consumer relationship. And I think they saw it years in advance. And where everybody else, every reporter and Wall Street predicted this is going to be a horrible disaster. Nobody's going to go to an Apple store. I mean, they just blew literally every metric and record out of the water because they did it well, right? They didn't just represent their brand, they represented it well. And I think that's what brand owners and sellers have the opportunity to do today on Amazon.
Shannon, just backing up a little bit to some of the objections that I hear, I'm just reminded of one that I hear almost every time. Jason, I have a long-standing relationship with this distributor. Or Jason, this reseller is providing a lot of revenue, and I don't know how to talk to them. I don't know how to communicate this to them, right? And so, the first thing that I say to them is when you're having a conversation, ask them how much of their revenue that they're getting for you is coming from Amazon. If the answer is 90 to 100%, then you have to ask them the question, then what value are you to me? If all you're doing is taking my product, marking it up, and then creating a crappy listing on Amazon, frankly, I can do that better. I can do that with my own internal team. I can do that with an agency. Hell, I can do that better myself. And also, how many other brands do you carry, reseller and distributor? And how much time out of your day, out of your week, are you spent, putting my brand ahead of others? Let's talk again about the benefits of controlling the brand. And it's we've kind of been filtering this through and smattering this throughout the podcast, but let's summarize this for our listeners.
So, we actually put this in our agreements, right? The brands we work with must be willing to enforce channel control as a key dependency in order to be successful, or we're not going to sign them, because we know that's how much of a difference it makes. But, you alluded to this, I think, in the last question is, as a single seller, you can ensure there's brand consistency across all of your listings and the Amazon storefront. You're able to own brand registry and make sure that every ASIN is not only enrolled in brand registry, but has A+ content, has videos. And most importantly, Jason, they're able to execute a holistic advertising strategy, utilizing all ad types to both defend their brand and gain new market share. And that's the part we were talking about earlier is, if you're just passively letting resellers just accept the sales that are coming from brand awareness and your current ranking, there is no intentional growth. And you cannot get that growth without being the only seller. So for me, it's about consistency of your branding, consistency of your messaging across all your listings, as well as customer communication. Because you may be willing to work with a customer and say, hey, I'm sorry you had a bad experience. Love to help you out. Here's some resources. Here's a PDF to maybe help you assemble the product, or a video that's going to help you use the product better. And your reseller's like blowing them off. I'm not going to give you a refund, or, I'm not going to help you out. Like it's about the idea that nobody cares about your brand as much as you do, and nobody ever will. And I think, to me, that's the point that seals the deal. There is no other platform on Amazon that people go to, other platform beyond Amazon that people go to just to do product research, even if they're in a store, even if they're going to buy it on another website or another channel. They're doing the research on Amazon. They're asking questions on Amazon. If you're not there to respond, to display and put your best foot forward and, display your brand in the best light, you're losing.
Shannon, I was just talking to a small aggregator yesterday, and they had acquired some companies that did not have brand. They were, just the old school. They went to China, these companies, and they went into a Chinese factory showroom. They picked a couple of things off the shelf and then slapped a logo on it. And they didn't really build a brand. And they were just bemoaning the fact that they couldn't figure out how to grow their revenue on Amazon. If you as a seller or a brand think that you can compete with a commoditized product without building that trust and brand on Amazon and compete against the China factories that are flooding the listings these days, you're just dead wrong. You're dead wrong. And, I had a conversation with a $1 billion brand last month. And, the good news for them when we were talking to them was that, hey, your top two brand aware brand name customers, or I should say competitors, are not playing the game on Amazon properly. So there's opportunity there. But here's my bigger concern for you. If you don't get in there and play the Amazon game the right way, these other brands down here, and I showed them some market data, these other brands that you've never heard of that just grew 3,500% last year, they're not only going to come in and eat your market share on Amazon. If you don't defend your brand on Amazon, the next phase of their growth is going to come into and get your retail shelf space. You have to defend yourself. If you don't defend, you'll get run through. A couple of other things that really stick out is the advertising piece. I don't believe, Shannon, you can have an effective advertising strategy if you aren't the only seller on Amazon. You don't have the data. You don't have the data in order to create the efficient campaigns, in order to know what's working and what's not, if other jokers are coming in here and cutting you out on price.
Again, a lot of this is reiteration, but I had a heart to heart with the last company I talked to, and I told them straight out, I said, 9 out of 10 companies won't be able to make this shift because it's too hard. And that's just the reality, but for the 10% that are, we're willing to work with you because we know the upside. And this is going back a little bit, but a great example of this, I worked with a company called TableMate. Robin Behar, who was one of the managing partners, reached out to me and said, "Hey, love what you're doing on Amazon with this other company. Can you help TableMate?" I said, "Absolutely." And we just went through the process, Jason. We kicked off the resellers. We removed all the counterfeiters. We took all these crappy listings and we basically made them obsolete. They dropped off the search results. We created beautifully optimized listings. We controlled the advertising. We did offense and defense, 0 to 1 million in the first year. And what's crazy to think about is the passive sales that were coming through Amazon, as calculated by Jungle Scout previously, were only about $15,000 to $20,000 a month. So you think about the difference of that, of what does it look like to just passively accept, Amazon sales versus what happens if we really do this thing right. And again, your point about being focused is so true, because there was 30 listings that people could buy from, some which were completely counterfeit. When we took those listings and consolidated them into 4 and put them under one parentage, #1 new release, #1 bestseller that we held and maintained for the next 3 years. I mean, you don't get that by allowing resellers to continue to sell.
Yeah, and Shannon, there's a lot of fear in the economy right now. A lot of businesses are fearful about a potential recession. But I just want to reiterate to brands and look, if you're a big brand out there and you're not sure how to do this, or you're one of the 90% that Shannon's talking about that says it can't be done, I can assure you it can be done. And if you don't have the team internally to do it, we can help you do it. And I would highly encourage you to do it, because you have an actual opportunity during a potential recession to grow your revenue during a recession. And that doesn't happen very often, especially for the big brands or those middle, small to medium-sized businesses. But there's absolutely opportunity to grow. And you just highlighted that one. Previously they were doing 10,000 a month. They took that to about, close to 100,000 a month by playing the Amazon game the right way, protecting and defending their brand, shutting off the resellers who are doing them no favor, shutting off the distributors who are doing them no favors. And I think, guys, it's a 21st century way of thinking. It's a futuristic way of thinking. Stop looking in the rearview mirror, look down the highway, because there's tons of opportunity for you to grab on this Amazon platform.
Yeah, the last thing that I want to say is, for brands and manufacturers who say, we don't want the headache of Amazon, I would say there's sort of 2 options, maybe 3, but the main 2 are, if you're going to have a reseller, right? And you alluded to this at the beginning, but I want to circle back to it. If you're going to have a reseller, have one exclusive authorized reseller who is basically chosen to represent your brand on Amazon, and make sure they are doing all of these things. We've got the Amazon checklist. You can go to day2podcast.com and download it. Make sure, go through that list with them and say, are you doing every single one of these things? Because if they're not, you're leaving money on the table. But
just to be clear, Shannon, we absolutely do not recommend that. You should do it yourselves, and you can work with a partner who can help you.
That's the other part of it, Jason. If you bring in the right partner, the headache of managing Amazon largely goes away. In Avenue 7 Media, we specialize in that with all of our departments, with our proprietary technology that we use to manage it, and the playbooks and SOPs and the processes and all the tools that we use. Our team, we calculated it out, 280 years of Amazon experience, Jason, that our team has. And next year, that's going to go to 400 or 500 years, which is just mind-boggling to think about. But, nobody else has the expertise and the tools and technology and the playbooks to bring all those pieces together. And we love and specialize. And I think you mentioned this in one of our calls last week. We specialize in working with companies who have previously dominated in the B2B and make the decision to switch to a B2C model and capitalize on everything that Amazon has to offer and beyond.
Yeah, and isn't anyone to date who's made that transition who isn't absolutely thrilled with their risk taking and their willingness to, look off the edge and jump. And so thanks for that. Thanks for that Av7 plug, Shannon. I always appreciate that. And look, folks, just recapping here. Controlling and defending, protecting and defending your brand on Amazon is a 21st century must have. Allowing multiple resellers to sell on Amazon, your brand will create additional complexity, headaches, and will ultimately be bad for your business and your customers, not just on Amazon, everywhere digitally. The only way to protect and grow and defend your brand on Amazon is to gain control of the marketplace and establish yourself as the only seller of your brand on Amazon. And so, look, again, listeners and viewers on the YouTube channel and on your where you listen to podcasts, thanks as always for listening. I really appreciate it. If you're ready to start growing and protecting your brand on Amazon with a team of experienced Amazon operators, you can visit us at day2podcast.com. That's day2podcast.com. And lastly, if you know anyone else who would gain value from this podcast, please share it with them. Thanks for listening and happy selling.